On this week's episode of Three Wide, we go over Kevin Harvick going from winless for 65 races to now a back-to-back winner at both Michigan and Richmond. Also, we go over an amazing race by the two Christophers, Bell and Buescher. We also discuss Chandler Smith locking himself into the next round of the playoffs, and we look ahead to the upcoming weekend at Watkins Glen. We go over the favorites as well as the dark horses to keep your eye on. So let's get started. So we had the Truck Series take to the track on Saturday night, where Chandler Smith got his third win of the season, locking him into the next round of the playoffs with Grant Enfinger. And behind Chandler, the top 10 looked like this. You had John Hunter Nemechek second, followed by Ty Majeski in third. Grant Enfinger finished in fourth, Corey Heim fifth, and Taylor Gray in sixth. Matt Crafton, he finished in seventh, with Christian Eckes in eighth, Zane Smith in ninth, and Carson Hocevar finished in 10th place. And speaking of Hocevar, he mixed it up again this past week with a non-playoff driver, and this was coming towards the tail end of the race. Drivers were pretty much hoping for a caution at this point. Tires were getting pretty worn. It looked like it was going to be a long stretch to the checkered flag, but Nick Lights, he was multiple laps down in the 33 truck, and Carson Hocevar was behind him, and Carson was the last truck on the lead lap. Going into turn one, Chandler Smith, the leader, he was right there. He goes to the inside of Carson going into turn one, where you had Hocevar in the middle and Lights on the outside. And it looked like Hocevar just drove straight into Nick Lights and sent him into the wall, which brought out a much needed caution for a lot of drivers. And what was interesting to me was NASCAR ruled that Carson Hocevar was still on the lead lap. He was ahead of leader Chandler Smith at the time of caution, even though you could see on the replay, because it was right there at the caution lights, Chandler Smith was, already going into turn two, probably 3 or 4 truck lengths ahead of Carson by the time the caution fell. But nonetheless, Hocevar was ruled to stay on the lead lap. And Nick did an interview with Front Stretch after coming out of the care center, and he took the blame. He said he feels like he chopped the nose of Carson, but to me, it looked like Hocevar didn't even attempt to make the corner. He just drove in there and sent him up into the wall. And this is really the second race in a row where Carson's had an incident with a non-playoff driver. You remember, he turned Colby Howard head on into the wall at IRP. And right now, Carson is sitting 3 points below the cut line. So he's got to quit fooling and worrying about these non-playoff drivers as far as, letting them really get in his way or mess up his race. Like whether the deal with Nick Lights was intentional or not, it definitely took away from his race, in my opinion. He has to look ahead. He has to focus on his race, instead of fooling with these guys who he's battling. He's got a good truck. He can finish well. He can get himself in that next round. But if he keeps racing people this way, especially non-playoff guys, Carson's the one with more to lose than the Nick Lights and the Colby Howards of the Truck Series. And if he keeps poking the bear, then they're going to make him pay for it. And I go back, I saw a lot of people sharing the video from Ryan Preece back in Charlotte when him and Hocevar got into it, going for the win, where Preece was pretty much like telling the young kids, don't race that way. You're going for your first win. You don't need to be like that, And it seems like with these past couple incidents, his words are ringing more and more true with it. So looking at the playoffs, as I said, Carson, he is 3 points out. Christian Eckes is 6 points out. Those are the first two drivers that would be eliminated. Matt Crafton, again, the playoffs are on, and he has put himself above the cut line. The next race won't be for another 4 weeks at Kansas. And at that track, going with the 3 drivers right there on the edge, you have Matt Crafton, who out of 24 races there, he has 3 wins, 7 top 5s, 14 top 10s, has the most experience between him, Eckes, and Hocevar. But Christian Eckes, I think, is going to be the guy to watch. He's only ran 5 races at Kansas, but he has 3 top 5s and 4 top 10s. So he's got good speed at mile-and-a-half tracks. He's shown that this year, and he could be a guy to keep your eye on throughout the race to get some stage. If he can get some stage points ahead of Crafton and come away with a good solid finish, he could really flip the points right now and get himself above that cut line. Carson Hocevar, meanwhile, he probably has the worst stats of them. He's only ran 2 races at Kansas so far, and that's a finish of 23rd and 15th. But you got to expect his team is going to give him the best truck they can to get him out there and be competitive and have a shot to move on to the next round. So it's moving right along. Grant Enfinger, he gets another top 5 after winning last week or a week or two ago at IRP. So he's turned it up for the playoffs. So a lot still can happen. Like I said, we got to wait quite a bit to get to Kansas, but once we do, and that checker flag falls, it's going to be interesting to see if Eckes can pull himself out of that hole. And this year we had the Cup Series on Sunday afternoon at Richmond instead of the usual Saturday night race. And when everything was all said and done, Kevin Harvick gets back-to-back wins, his 60th win of his career. And behind him in the top 10, you had Christopher Bell, Chris Buescher, Denny Hamlin, Chase Elliott, Logano, Martin Truex Jr., Eric Almirola, Kyle Busch, and Ryan Blaney rounded out the top 10. And a lot of people were still kind of talking negatively about the race itself or the race at Richmond. Me personally, I like this Richmond race at least better than I did the spring race. You saw a multi-lane track. We saw Ty Dillon running up against the wall. I mean, right on the wall there at one point, and was able to use that momentum and keep himself ahead of Ross Chastain. And I can't think of the last time, if I ever seen a driver be able to go up against the wall at Richmond and carry off momentum and keep up with the field. So that was fun to watch. You had drivers all over the place. It wasn't a wreck fest. There was no late caution. The race came down to pit stops and drivers managing their tires, and they're just going head to head with each other, which was nice to see. It felt like a true short track race. Lap traffic played a key part in the race, especially as it got towards the end with a battle between Buescher and Harvick. And that's probably my favorite part of the short track racing, whether it's at Bristol or Martinsville or Richmond, is the lap traffic and how these leaders can navigate it, because lap traffic can make or break a leader's race and how they race it. So ultimately, Harvick was able to get through lap traffic better than Buescher, but Chris nearly, became the 16th different winner on the season. He was challenging for the lead around 40 laps to go, and if he'd have been able to get ahead of Harvick, hold off Kevin and a hard charging Christopher Bell, I mean, that would have created some major chaos in the playoff standings as we're getting ready to go into the final 2 races. So Chris, he's shown more flashes this season of potential than years past. He gets his first career pole this season. He has 2 top 5s, which has so far tied his career best in the season. 7 top 10s. He's one away from tying his career or his season best on that one. So could this be a glimpse of what the future looks like for RFK Racing? It's very hopeful that it is, just mainly, when Brad Keselowski got involved with Roush Fenway, it was hopeful that he would be the one to bring them back to the spotlight of NASCAR. And like I said, it's been an up and down year, which was expected. Roush, when Brad came on, they weren't the powerhouse that they were back in, the 2005 and 2006 years. But we're seeing more glimpses of it. So hopefully this is a sign of things to come, and we see, more runs like this with Chris. And look, the schedule for these last 2 races is setting up really in his favor, which we'll go over here in just a minute. But also want to talk about Christopher Bell. He has an incredible last 45 laps. He goes, after the green flag pit stops, he goes from 6th place, 13 seconds back to the leader, to finishing in 2nd place within half a second of Kevin Harvick. If we had a caution there at the end of the race, or the race was 2 or 3 laps longer without a caution, I think Christopher Bell gets his 2nd win on the season. He was coming with a head of steam, and he's had a strong past month, ever since his win at New Hampshire. He won there, then he rattled off a 4th place finish. He finishes 12th at the next race. Now, last week at Michigan, he finished 26th, but that was after the crash with Ross Chastain, where Bell, he had already won a stage, and he was looking at a possible top 3 finish, maybe even a win, because he was a very strong car there at the end of that race as well before the wreck, and now a 2nd place finish at Richmond. So if he's starting to get hot, he's starting to get some momentum. This could be a good thing for him to push a little bit further in the playoffs than what may be expected of him. So sticking with the playoff narrative, after the race, you had people talking about Kevin being a championship contender. Now, granted, everyone to me is a championship contender in this playoff format. I mean, you could have a mediocre season, get in the playoffs, and rattle off some strong finishes like Grant Enfinger has so far in the Truck Series, and you're going to look like a guy who could win a championship. But I'm still not convinced that Harvick is this championship contender. He has his lowest average finish since 2009. He hasn't shown that much consistency either. He's, if he gets a top 10 from here on out, he would beat last year's top 10 count by one, I believe, if I did my math right. Do I think he can become a championship contender? I do. I mean, he's got back-to-back wins. He's got 2 wins after not winning in nearly 2 years. So momentum is built for him right now. It's definitely on his side, and confidence. Last year, all he had to, keep hearing about was, when's Harvick going to retire? Has he lost a step? Is this the decline of the career of Kevin Harvick? And now he's won back-to-back races, and all of a sudden everybody's all about Kevin. Now you're this championship contender. You're having an amazing season. Nobody can beat you. So if he can hold on to that confidence, hold on to that momentum, then he could be very dangerous. He's not called the closer for no reason. He's a good finisher of these races, of a season. So I'll be interested to see where he sits after the first round of the playoffs. I believe. I mean, he's going. I think he makes it through the first round at least, maybe even I believe the second too, unless he just goes out and has terrible runs, a lot of mechanical failures or crashes. So once we get through that first round, though, I'll be interested to look back and see how he's stacking up then to the rest of the playoff field. So let's point out our spotlight drivers from this past weekend at Richmond. We had 2 drivers who had solid finishes on their day, one driver who continues to impress throughout his season in the Truck Series, another who is showing so much promise for the future of his team and of himself in the sport. On the Truck Series side, it is Ty Majeski is my spotlight driver. He finishes in 3rd place after winning the pole for Richmond. He led 73 laps, won stage 1, and has had a solid first full-time season in the Truck Series so far. He's been, without a doubt, the best truck for Thor Sport this season. Behind him is Christian Eckes, who's battling for, to get above that cut line. But with Ty, I feel like he is a dark horse championship contender. He's been quietly consistent all year. He has not broke through to get that win, but he always finds himself there at the end competing for, a top 3 or top 5 finish. So if he can keep that up through the rest of this season, he's going to be a guy to watch when Phoenix rolls around here at the end of the year. And on the Cup Series side, I mentioned him earlier. Chris Buescher is my spotlight driver. He looked like he belonged up front racing with guys like Kevin Harvick, Christopher Bell. He was cool, calm, and collected. He didn't overdrive it, do anything over his head, which has been his MO for most of his career. He's been a guy that's known for consistency, just keeping the car clean. And now we go to Watkins Glen and Daytona, 2 of his strongest tracks probably on the schedule. 3 top 10s in the last 4 road course races. At Daytona, he has 3 of his 9 career top 5s have come at Daytona, and he's had several top 10s behind that. So Chris Buescher is definitely going to be a name to watch over the next couple weeks. It'll be fun to see where he finishes up at Watkins Glen. But if we go into Daytona and he's still looking to get that win to get in the playoffs, he is going to be a guy to watch for sure. And now we only have 2 regular season races left for the Cup Series before the playoffs start. This weekend, they will be going to Watkins Glen up in New York, where Kyle Larson will look to defend his race win from last year. But the drivers to watch, to me, are Chris Buescher and Martin Truex Jr. For Chris, in the last 4 road course races this season, 3 of them have come in the top 10. So, coming off a 3rd place finish where you're battling for the win late in the race, now you're going to, a track that fits your driving style right now. He could be, a dark horse to watch in this race. Martin Truex Jr., a solid road course racer himself. He's won at Watkins Glen before. This could be his last chance, best chance at gaining some points on Blaney to get himself above the cut line, or even get a race win to put himself in the playoff field. Because super speedways in the Cup Series has not been his strong suit. He was, a winner multiple times in the Xfinity Series, but it just has not translated back for him here in the Cup Series. He's always seems to be getting involved in the big crashes. He just, unfortunately for him, he just can't seem to avoid those wrecks. So I feel like he's going to go into Watkins Glen looking to have the best race of his season there, just to kind of get that pressure off of him for Daytona here in the next couple of weeks. On the Xfinity side, Ty Gibbs is the defending winner. And could he get his 6th win on the season this Saturday? Or AJ Allmendinger, surprisingly, he has never won an Xfinity race at Watkins Glen. He's one of the top road course drivers. He's won at Watkins Glen in the Cup Series. So I was surprised to look and see that he has not won in the Xfinity Series at Watkins Glen. I figured that would be a huge check off his list. So he'll be one to watch, a strong contender. But if as far as dark horses go, I'd be watching Sheldon Creed. His last race at Watkins Glen was in the Truck Series back in 2021, where he finished in 3rd place there. He's a strong road course racer. He's one of the road courses in the Truck Series. So he'll be a driver to keep your eye on for the battle for that cut line in the Xfinity Series playoff. And before we get off, going back to the Cup Series, while as of this moment there has not been an update on Kurt Busch as far as his status for Watkins Glen, it would not surprise me if he is out until the playoffs. He was hoping to race this past weekend at Richmond, but he was not cleared. And I feel like, you're dealing with a coming back from a concussion. The last race you want to come back on is the twists and turns of Watkins Glen. That seems like that would be too much, to put him back into. And then, Daytona, of course, is way too big of a risk, I think, of getting caught up in a huge wreck and injuring yourself further. I think that his team's going to want to avoid that if they can. With the way everything has changed in NASCAR for the better with concussions and driver injuries, I'm sure a playoff spot and competing for a championship compared to Kurt's health is going to take a back seat. Right now, he's still in the playoffs, but if we go to Watkins Glen and, Buescher or Truex wins and somebody new wins at Daytona, he would be the first driver out, so depending on where the new winner is in the points. But I just don't think it's worth the risk to bring him back at either one of these two tracks. Save him, let him continue to heal, continue to get better. You want to be sure he's at the top of his game when he comes back to race in the playoffs. And, for the, future outlook in his career, in his life, you want him to be 100% healed. So I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see Kurt in that 45 car until the playoffs roll around. Now, before we go, I did want to give an update on our YouTube channel, where I missed the past couple weeks when I've been hoping to do a weekly upload on this channel. Been running into some issues as far as timing with getting the video recorded, getting it uploaded and edited, and then put out on YouTube. I'm going to try something new this week. I think that will work better for me. Hopefully it should be on there on Wednesday afternoons. My goal is to have a video every week, either Wednesday night or Thursday at the latest. So if you haven't already, be sure to go to that YouTube channel. I'll put the link in the description and hit that subscribe button so you can be updated whenever the videos are uploaded. And y'all can check them out. Just trying to get as much content out there as I can. And just appreciate y'all for staying patient with me, supporting this channel, whether it's been through the podcast or the YouTube channel itself. Don't forget, you can also go to Twitter. I'm at 3Y3. You can give me a follow there. Also now on Facebook as well, at 3Y3 is also my handle on there. You can hit follow button, like and follow button on there, and we post content on there week in and week out, from the new podcast episodes, the new YouTube videos, and any stories that might break throughout the week. So as always, appreciate y'all's support, appreciate y'all watching or listening along. And hopefully, we've had some major growth this year, and look forward to continue growing. And hopefully we'll have some exciting updates for you here in the next month or so. And that will wrap up this week's episode of 3 Wide. As always, thank you for joining me and listening along. Be sure, if you haven't already, to hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening to this podcast from. Also, feel free to leave me a review. Let me know what you think of the show, any topics you might want discussed, or giving your 2 cents on the everything going on in the sport or anything that was discussed on today's episode. Hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their week, and we will meet back same time next week and go over all that went down at Watkins Glen.